We are part of the Fired Up Sports Network of shows. Please check out other Fired Up Sports Network podcasts like the P-Lot Pod, Water Cooler Talk, Bell Smashers, Philly Sports Love and Pain, Drunk on Broad, Beer Battered Sports, and the Fired Up Sports Show, which are available on all major podcasting hosting sites and social media. Also, check out Mark Ramos' Roundup on firedupsports.com, which breaks down the happenings going on with all your favorite local teams.
Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions.
E-A-G-L-E-S-Eagles! Swinging a miss, struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Flyers are going to win the Stanley Cup. The Flyers win the Stanley Cup for the lead. Yes! Iverson, wow, what a fake off Daniels as he broke his ankles and got all the way to the cup.
Well, good morning. Good morning for episode 184 on this rainy ass Saturday, March morning. Talking all things Sixers on Drunk on the Court this morning, Mark. It's just one of those rainy days where you just kind of park your ass on the couch, turn on some spring training in the afternoon, and hope for better weather.
Yeah, that sounds like a really great day. I enjoy those days. I think we were just saying before the show about getting older and things like that. That sounds like a really nice day. I gotta say,
gone are those days, Mark, where we plan Saturday nights to be, eventful and bar hopping from place to place. Now you're like, oh, you want to get takeout?
yeah,
You're like, oh, it's raining. Do we have to leave the house?
yeah. Do we have
I feel
to?
like, yeah, I've grown to appreciate those days,
Yeah,
considering how busy the weeks get. So, like, you know what? It's a cool. Let's celebrate this rainy ass Saturday with some Sixers.
yeah,
And Mark, the thing that I've been thinking about since the Embiid injury, it really gave me some good depth to talk to a very, very specific group of people. So this message goes out to everybody and anybody that even contemplated the trade of Joel Embiid.
right.
You're getting a good dose of what life would be like without Joel Embiid.
Yeah,
If you're planning on building a team around Tyrese Maxey, as good as he has been, as much growth as he has shown, as much promise as he has as an emerging all-star, you're getting a really, really solid dose about how challenging it would be to compete in the NBA without Joel Embiid. And it also gives you a little bit of pause about what you might get back, because what you get back is never going to be commensurate with the talent of a guy like Joel Embiid. So
yeah,
if you like being the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th seed, this is your team. But the thing that I love is the way that they have handled his injury this time. It's not with rehab. It's not with some get you to the next stop kind of procedure. They went in, they cleared it, they took care of it. From all things considered, from his little sidebar press conference thing at the facility a couple of days ago, things seem to be kind of on schedule. They're going to reevaluate him in a couple of weeks. Seems like the end of this month might be a target date, end of March or maybe early April. Get him ready for that playoff run. And, barring anything else popping up, this could be the first time that you're really seeing a strong, healthy Joel Embiid go into the playoffs. And if that's the case, God bless, because my man is going to be on a tear.
Yeah. 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 I mean, looking at the way things have been since he's been out, it's rough, you know. You can't.
You're putting that kindly.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I'm in a better mood, I think, that I don't know. But yeah, I mean, look, it's one of these things again where we already knew, right, coming into the year that maybe the depth would be a little bit of a challenge, and even though that there was across the board, it kind of like with Embiid, the depth kind of works a little bit better. Without him, that you're asking guys to do a lot more than what they're
Right.
capable of. I mean, just to be blunt about it. And you know, I think that last week or two of the season after Embiid had spoke to the media this week, usually that doesn't really matter, right? But it's going to be really, really pivotal for this Sixers team, you know, to
Mm-hmm.
see if they can get him back into work him in the game shape. Because I think that's
Yeah.
really my major issue going into the playoffs. It would be great to get him back with no lingering ailments, but it's also, you know, there's what, 3 or 4 new guys on this roster. You kinda have to basketball's got a chemistry element to it. You gotta learn what the other guy does and
Yes.
things like that. And so and I think for a playoff series, you know, no matter who you play with or who you play against, if you're looking at a group if you're playing a group in the first round that has played together all year or half the year, you know, like a team like the Pacers who made that Siakam trade or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, from a chemistry element, like they kind of know what each other does better than, you know, bringing Embiid back and then he has to learn what Lowry does and he's got to learn what Campaign does and they got to learn what he does because he's a big force, you know,
Yeah.
as more of a
Mm-hmm.
uh, interior presence and things like that, and they haven't played with him yet. So there's that part of it, but just having him back healthy is a net positive, right? Like I'm a big believer,
Truly.
especially in basketball. Um, you know, you get the talent first, and you figure out the other stuff later.
Yeah, and that's like when we talk about like trades and you know the thought of trading and be you know in my mind I remember I'm pretty sure if and if I'm misquoting this I'm pretty sure at some point I heard you know a guy that I trust his word more than anything else like when I listen to Ray Didinger
Mhm.
the ears pop up and I remember him saying something a bunch of years ago that like whenever you're making a trade doesn't matter what sport the team that wins the trade is the team that gets the best player in the trade, regardless.
Yeah,
So like and there's a lot of history in that to go back and yeah the one that's easy to think about right now because it's kind of that season is popping up but like you think about the JT Real Muto trade
mhm.
right nobody wanted to give up Sixto Sanchez nobody wanted to give up what they thought could be an electric arm at the top of the rotation.
Yeah,
And right
yeah,
now, Sixto Sanchez looks like he could start for the Kensington Men's Softball League. Like, so I'm looking at this going, there's no way that moving forward that I even consider playing trading Embiid. For
no,
your job right now is to create a window for him to compete. You know, and there's going to be plenty of time in the off season to talk about the cap space that they're going to have with the way that they were able to get out from a lot of contracts.
mhm.
Um, but as far as this year goes, um, this year has to be about getting him healthy. And you know, if I'm a team at the back, you know, at the front end of the East, the Sixers are the last team I want to see as a 5-6 team, even if that other team's going to have home court advantage.
Yeah,
Um, when you've got to deal with Embiid in a 5-7 game series, that's really, really tough to beat night after night after night.
yeah, yeah, and especially I think coming in to go back to the Embiid like trade stuff. You know, I am under the impression that you don't move a player like that unless he wants out. Like, unless he
Yeah.
comes to
Uh,
you and says, like, hey, what are we doing here? I'm wasting, like, this isn't, we're not going anywhere. I need to, you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
that happens too. And then, like, you cross that bridge when you get to it. But I think, like, for a player who's accomplished what he's accomplished to this point, you let him, he's a part of your plan as long as he wants to be a part of the plan here, or part of the solution. And so I don't even really, like, to be honest, like, I don't even really kind of, like, think about that with him. Like,
I got you.
just he's just kind of like a part of it until he's doesn't want to be a part of it. And if that means he's going to play his entire career as a Sixer, that would be wonderful. I would love to see that. Um,
Yeah.
Even with the other things, because I know how electric he can be and how dominant he can be on a nightly basis. Prior to the injury, I mean, like, and go back in the archives, look at some of the Drunk on the Court shows.
Woo.
I mean, like, this was
The
historic
stat
stuff.
mute, the stat muse specials.
Yeah, the Stat Muse specials. I mean, these were very, very. This was historic stuff for him and for the team, and you know, I don't even really put a lot of stock in it when I think about the trade stuff. Um, you
Yeah,
know,
and I don't think, Martha, that it's a reality from a realistic standpoint. I think
mhm,
there's a lot of there's a lot of talk radio, social media conversation about the consistency of the injuries and him not being there when it counts, and
mhm,
do you just move on? I know that there's a lot of conversation about it, whether or not it's more fictional than it is realistic. Um, but I think to me, and I'm kind of looking at the guys that they've kind of started to build around, and you've gotten decent production from Maxi and Buddy Hield since the trade deadline.
mhm.
Um, it hasn't necessarily translated into a ton of wins, right? You're
Right.
still seeing a team that's kind of struggling. They've got four? They've got 4 wins since the Embiid injury.
Yeah.
Um, but like you're getting the on court production. Like Maxi is averaging almost 27. Buddy
Mhm.
Hield's averaging 22. They're both in the 7 assist range. They're both averaging more than 4.5 rebounds a game.
Right.
So you're still getting good production, and I think if you're going to be competitive, you're going to need production night after night from these two guys.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And like, I think with to like just kind of tie that together with the Embiid injury stuff, one thing that I think is a really, I don't know if underrated is the right word for it, but I think he ties together so much of what they do defensively. And when you don't have that interior presence, and Buddy Hield's a great shooter,
Mm-hmm.
natural touch from a scorer's perspective, not a particularly great defender. Um, Campaign gives you more offense than he does defense. Um, Maxi's kind of a work in progress defensively too, although he's a great scorer as well.
Mm-hmm.
And just like I said this on previous shows, I remember us talking about it, Don. But I thought, like, when the Embiid injury came down, I was like, okay, maybe you can patch this for a little while with Bamba and Reed, stagger the minutes, have them split
Mm-hmm.
time. That has not been the case with the two of them. And
No.
I don't know what I'm gonna get from either one of them on a nightly basis. Forget about the scoring. I'm not even worried about the scoring, but just like an
Mm-hmm.
interior presence part. I feel like teams have kind of gotten to the rim almost at will during this stretch. They do whatever they want.
It's been tough to watch, right? Because you know that if Embiid's in there for the 30, 34, 35 plus minutes a night, that the defensive presence, teams know not to send guys in because there's at least that defensive threat.
Mm,
Now, I mean, it looks more like a turnstile than it does anything, because
yeah,
you can be anybody and everybody. It doesn't matter size,
yeah,
height, athleticism. You got to make one move and you can get by guys. And you know considering the amount of injuries that they're dealing with right now, it seems like
Mhm.
every night there's 2, 3, 4 guys. They just can't seem to get healthy. The health is something that they're really, really struggling with.
Yeah.
Which is where and Joe, talking about Tobias Harris, the inconsistency, man, it's crushing.
Yeah.
And I know Harris is a guy that gets killed a lot with the contract. And that's more a product of the Sixers having to spend money
Yeah.
more than it is them wanting to pay him what he's worth. But he's a guy that you need in this stretch to really step up. And Tobias, the friendly ghost, is there when he wants to be, because you get nights like last night where he's he and Maxey both score over 30, but then
Yeah.
you have other nights where he scores in the single digits,
Right.
and Embiid's not playing, and
Mhm.
that you're never going to win. You're never going to win with that being the case. Like,
Yeah. The Harris thing is, as it is for I think a lot of Sixer fans. I feel I get all of the sentiments about it. I really do. Last night he goes for 31, right? Really, really productive game. And then you see you see online, which I always get a kick out of, you ever see the Tobias Harris apology form?
oh God, I
Floating
did
around
see
out
that this morning. Yeah, no,
there?
I saw it. It's
And I always get a kick out of that because, also like a part of me, not to be like really, really terrible to the guy or rough on the guy, but it's just like I always get the like, I'm like, what I'm I'm not filling out this apology form for a guy who should be doing this anyway. Look at what he's making. He should be averaging 20 every night. And
at a minimum.
yeah,
At a minimum, you should be able to get that production from him, and you just don't. And especially
yeah,
at a time where you know that your big star goes out, and not for nothing, but like my son, who's 13, who will watch the game with me but doesn't really pay attention. We're watching I just threw on, as we were eating breakfast, watching the replay this morning. So we caught like the last 6, 7, 8 minutes.
yeah,
And he caught me with a burner that I couldn't even answer, because he's like, who's the best player on the Sixers? I'm like, all right, it's Embiid, right? But
right.
he's not playing right now. He goes, all right, well, who's the next guy? And I'm going, well, that's Maxey. He goes, well, who's the third guy? And I'm going, well, shit, it should be Tobias Harris, but you
He
know,
certainly paid like it,
you know,
you know.
and he's like, and then he goes, well, Dad, who's the guy you were talking about that like is like really, really not good but should be? And I'm like, Tobias Harris. And he goes, but you just said he's the third best guy. And I'm going,
Yeah.
yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. So
It's
that's kind of where we
all
are.
all
It's
things are
like,
true there,
I'm like, so it's it's the kind of thing where it just puts your brain in a pretzel, because you're like, I can't figure out why you're not getting the production, because if you look around this roster, right, you see, and Joe's asking about Daryl Morey.
Yeah.
At this point, I don't hate the plan of what the roster has kind of come to at this point. Your
Yeah.
problem is that the straw that stirs the drink ain't in the drink. He's
Yeah.
sitting on the countertop, because it's got a crack in it and you need a new drink. Like, we're
Yeah.
waiting for that guy to come back. But like, you look around this roster, right? You see a bunch of vets. You see a bunch of guys that have playoff experience. You
Right.
also see that they're kind of surrounding him with a lot of outside shooting talent, right? You look at, DeAnthony Melton, Kelly Oubre, Buddy Hield, Cam Payne, Nick Batum. Right? You have guys that once Embiid's on the court, it really does allow you to create the attention draw to Embiid. You kick it out for those guys to be able to hit open threes.
Yep.
It's so you have the roster construction. I don't have a ton of problems with. You're just this is what happens when you pull the most important piece out, right? You
Right.
see what's happened, around the league with, and look at like the Golden State Warriors, right? You're seeing what happens when injuries to your star players, and now they're in conversation with the play-in part of the tournament
Right.
for the
Yeah.
playoffs. Um, you know, and I'm really surprised that they also haven't addressed the buyout market. That buyout market's
Yeah.
been kind of
Yeah.
quiet. Um, Now we might see a move, right? They released Kenny Lofton Jr.
Mm.
So he and the other NBA players that he's already eaten are going to be kind of moved on. So that may open up a roster spot for somebody else.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a vet guy. I know Marcus Morris got bought out from his contract, so maybe that's a guy that they bring back,
Yeah. Bring
which
him
I
back.
wouldn't hate.
Yeah.
Even if that's a guy like Robin Lopez that
Mm.
we've talked about on a bunch of shows. Because I really think that having that secondary vet in the middle
Yeah.
would at least create a conversation for maybe other teams to question going into the lane without any hesitation.
Yeah. It's I don't know. It's a buffet line. Going to the rim for this team. Like, bring your plate and you can eat as much as you want.
Oh gosh, you are not lying.
And I agree with, like, to address Joe's first thing with Maury. What you said there, Don. Like, I think Maury's attempting to do I think he's attempting to do what we had been asking him for, or what we've been asking the team for a little while, is just like, hey, just surround this guy with shooters and let it work that way, because they haven't really done that in Embiid's prime so far, where
Mm-mm.
it's just like they kind of have all this perimeter shooting and then that dominant interior presence that Embiid is when he's right. And so I really don't have a problem with the plan, uh, as much as you said, like the main part of it is just not there right now,
Yeah.
because of the injuries. But yeah, like I think the backup center part is huge. You definitely want to address that. I feel like the buyout market has been quiet in general. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think there's been a lot of movement there. I actually saw last night that Shake Milton got bought out, former Sixer. So that it's usually, you're getting what you pay for with the buyout market, but it's definitely you're able to kind of help, get some help on the peripheral of the roster, and having a backup center, like Lopez, as we've said on this show a few times, somebody who can give you minutes where you feel comfortable. I think a lot, it's ironic because of Nick Nurse being the head coach of this Sixers team. But maybe they could do something like a higher end when you get Embiid back, similar to what he had on his title team when they had an aging Ibaka and Mark Gasol, and they kind of used them, like
Yeah.
in a staggered role. It kind of depended. I mean, I think Mark started, but Serge got minutes too, and it's
Yeah.
so they need, that would be cool if they could do like a higher end type of thing, which I think an Embiid Lopez, um, interior would be pretty good.
It significantly makes you more competitive
Yeah,
in those end of quarter minutes where you're pulling a beat off for maybe the last three of the first and the first two of the second.
yeah,
As much promise as Paul Reed has shown, Paul Reed is what he is, and
right,
you know what you're getting.
right,
He doesn't have the defensive presence that a guy who's on the plus side of 7 feet and has the NBA experience to be able to block shots. Paul Reed is an athletic 4. He is
yeah,
not a dominant 5.
yeah,
And I don't think you're not going to get a dominant thing from Lopez,
mhm,
but you're also going to get a competitive NBA presence for that 4 or 5 minute spell that you need to not let the lead get away, or not put yourself at a disadvantage.
yeah, yeah. It's funny because Reed is a lot like I know that I'd said this about Bamba on previous shows. Reed is like one of these guys where it's like some nights you're like, man, like there's a skill set here. I don't know really maybe what it is, but like there's definitely a lot of tools here. And then there's other nights. Like he had a look last night, I think it was, where he's on like I believe he's on the block or he's up a little bit higher and he ends up getting the ball and Tobias cuts towards the baseline, towards the rim.
Mhm.
And Paul like just really nice bounce pass to him. Tobias gets an easy 2 at the rim. Easy dunk. And I look at a play like that and I'm like, and I understand that that's kind of how it is, but it's just kind of
Right.
like, I'm like, if he could do that every night, like if he could do that once a night,
That consistency, right?
it would be great. It would be great. He would be, I'd feel a lot more comfortable with him getting those, playing some minutes. And, but it's just
And I thought there might be a little bit more player development with Nick Nurse,
yeah,
especially with an outside game. But God, his jumper from the outside looks wild to be kind. It seems like you're kind of like when he starts chucking up those shots from the outside, man. It looks not pretty.
yeah,
Even to look at a different guy on the roster, like when Mo Bamba squares up from 3, right? It looks like an athletic basketball shot
yeah.
that he knows kind of where to take those chances.
Mhm.
Man, Paul Reed, it look when he takes that 3, it looks like there's no reason why I should run out and guard any bit of it.
Yeah.
Because you kind of know what you're getting. You know that like if I'm a team like Charlotte last night, I'm letting Paul Reed take as many threes as he wants because
Right.
the makes are going to be wildly more inconsistent than the misses. I
Yeah.
know. So that part is hard because I thought you might see a little bit more outside shot development, which if he does develop an outside shot, that makes the drive to the rim a lot more athletic. And speaking of athleticism, right, the athleticism that you're getting from a guy like Ricky Council has
Oh
been,
man. Yeah.
and he put that all on display last night.
Yeah.
The pump fake, the dribble drive, and just rising up and going right over top, just
Man.
with authority. He was just it was just he's been a guy that you moved on from a couple guys at the trade deadline. You thought you were going to miss him, and he's kind of stepped right into that role,
Yeah.
and really kind of given you a little bit more consistently athletic production from the back
Yeah.
end of your roster, which I won't complain about.
No, certainly not. I wouldn't either. Ricky Council's a really like. There are guys in the league that you see elsewhere, like throughout the league, that are just unbelievably great athletes. Maybe they don't have like that elite basketball sense or court vision or whatever it is that keeps them from being like a starter, for example, or anything like that. But I mean, the athleticism is like striking, like with Ricky, and I'm a fan. I really am. This is the dunk raider.
And this is the dunk, man. You're right.
Yeah,
So what time to shoot? Ricky! Oh my goodness!
And really just
Explosion
goes
from C4.
and that
right there. That's where
that
the defender
description.
bites, and the rest is just a confrontation
Right.
at the rim. Meet you
He
there,
just-
defense.
Yeah, right.
Ricky
Like
wins that one.
you get a guy with that amount of athleticism, that amount of space, and you
Yeah.
allow him to get to the rim, man. Good. And the thing, like, I love the description of it, from Kate Scott, because
yeah,
to say that it's violent is being kind. He went
Yeah.
to the rim with, with some authority that we've only seen from guys like Joel Embiid.
yeah,
Like to be able to kind of go up top, and I know that like you're not getting you're getting what you're getting from him, but you're also getting the athleticism is
Mhm.
really good to see. And then you also had a really super athletic play from Tyrese Maxey getting the block late in the game.
Yeah.
You know, kind of the chase behind block, which was just another really cool thing to watch, man. I'm gonna try to pull it up.
Okay.
But talk about those guys on the back end of the roster, that athleticism.
Yeah, I mean, like for council, like for council there, like we're just seeing that dunk again, like just coming in with the, it's a mentality thing too. Like like we've talked about like that with, not to continue to pick on him because he was great last night, but the thing with Harris, like where, and there's a lot of guys like that in the league where, you get to the rim and there's more of a, I don't know, there's more of a, they're looking more to draw the contact than they are to finish at the rim. Mm-hmm. And, Philadelphia, I think, is always going to appreciate a guy that just like he's going in to rattle the backboard, with it. Mm-hmm. And, like looking at that dunk again, just like he's cradling it, like he's going up to throw it down. Like,
and he's going down with the ship on that one. He's just going to go wildly violent and kind of say your prayers, right? And then you got this play late in the game with
what a play by Maxey.
Man, on the drive and then from behind, just
chase
gets
behind
a
block.
piece of it.
Great play.
That
coming
is
back and getting
exquisite timing. Look at that.
The guy that
what a play by Maxey.
Late in the game where you want to get that. The Charlotte Hornets gave the Sixers everything they had last night, and really came to play. To see a guy with that kind of effort that late in the game, shows me a lot about where he is and what the player that he's at, because he's having the season that he's having really, really consistent, because he's got career highs in points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks.
Yeah.
Right. He's leading the Sixers right now, obviously, because Embiid's been out, but he's leading the Sixers in points, assists, and threes.
Yeah.
Just having a really, really, really good season.
Yeah, he is. And there's not, we've talked about him plenty. Like, there's not enough good things we could say about Tyrese and his game. I mean, that block, we were just talking about the athleticism of Ricky Council. To get your hand and punch that ball out late in a game like that, and to get all ball, right? No contact. That's a really, really good play, a really athletic play, and those are those are game-winning plays. You're gonna win games just on efforts like that, in close games. And that's one of the things that's really great about Tyrese is like, he's not he's gonna give you something. Like at least with the defense and things like that, like the effort is there. Like he has this like desire to improve, as you could see by putting up career numbers in every major statistical category. Just like he has this like desire to improve too. And that's, you can't teach that in a gym or anything like that. I mean, that's a mentality thing. And, he's a good one, man. The Sixers really got a good one in Tyrese. I hope he's around a long time.
And listen, to go no further, the guy that put everything on the line for this team, right? The guy that I'm sure players of this generation would go back and emulate. If there was a guy that could have put his all into everything, right? It was Allen Iverson.
Yeah.
And the news comes out that they're going to honor Allen Iverson on Friday, April 12th, they're going to unveil a sculpture in his honor at and I believe it's on the Legends Walk at their complex.
Yeah. Could
not think of a better guy to kind of emulate and idolize with a statue.
Yeah.
And this was right in the prime. That late 90s, early 2000s, that was like right in my prime viewing where, I remember, in college watching the finals, that finals run and going down that whole journey. There is not a better guy that emulates the passion of the city more than Allen Iverson.
No, No, and I think when you sent me this, because I had not seen this until you sent it to me as we were like preparing for our show. Um, I agree. You know, I can't think of anybody of like modern Sixers era that like embodies the toughness and grit and all that um, that Philadelphians and the sports scene kind of like, you know, they're a mirror of like what we are as like
Right.
Philadelphians. And Iverson embodied that in a way that to be that size and to um, have that fearlessness, which is what I always remember him for. You
Yeah.
said like it being your prime viewing, really for AI was my first viewing of the Sixers.
Okay.
So I mean, like he embodies what I think Sixers basketball is to me, you know,
Mhm.
and and just always like I was just always enamored by that, you know, like the ability to play the way he did and attack the rim the way he did
Yeah.
at that size. I mean, was really really impressive. He really deserves this. This is a really nice honor.
Mhm.
Um, and I wanted to ask you about this too. What do you think the sculpture? Usually they take a moment of like their career and make that the sculpture. So I was going to ask you because I have a couple in mind.
I mean, the iconic one that comes to mind immediately is, that step over.
Yep, that was one
Yeah,
of them for me.
that you know, I think it would be would would be it would be horrifically embarrassing for Tyrone Lue to be included in that statue.
Yeah,
Um, Even on a silhouette, I think everybody would know exactly what it was.
yeah,
Um, but I think that step over kind of embodies everything that he was.
yeah,
I mean, there's a ton of there's also a ton of moments of him going to the rim, that you know it to me. Now that I'm looking at this, it's either got to be for me either the step over or this one that's right front and center
yep,
with his ear to the fans, because that was something that he always used as a way to connect with the fans after those big shot moments where he's just walking around the court, kind of taking it all in.
yeah.
What do you got? What's your
Those
what's
were
your
actually.
initial thoughts?
It's funny you said those because those are the two exact ones that I was gonna pick. The one in the middle of the post there with him putting his, you know, his hand out, is like that. I think about that one often, like when I think
Mhm.
about him, and um, I think those would be the two. You know, those would be the two. Um, all throughout, like just to talk about, like you know the um the impact and all like he had on I think especially youth of my age that remember like that being our first real viewing
Mhm.
of Iverson. I mean all throughout playing basketball, leagues, everything like that. Um Kids wore sweatbands because of AI.
Yeah.
I actually got and I think it's in the top left hand corner. When I was playing, I actually got a sleeve to wear just because, oh, well, Iverson wore one. So I played with one on.
Nice.
I did when I played
Nice.
baseball. I always wore one and I always thought of it as like the AI sleeve.
Nice.
So, I mean, he meant a lot to uh, really just like basketball culture. Like you see, like
Mhm.
you mentioned his impact on like today's game. I mean,
Yeah.
for the guys that are old enough in the league now that remember him. Uh, you know, he was a hugely influential player. I know LeBron has been very complimentary of Allen and
Yeah.
his impact and you know the impact he had on just like uh, the youth. You know, like and yeah, I mean this is a really like deserving thing for him, and I'm really happy to see it, man. I really am. He should be enshrined in that way. I think.
100%. Listen, and I think the only other thing I would suggest is for the Sixers to figure out a way to bring back those iconic uniforms,
Yeah.
considering how connected back to
Mhm.
uh, that era of Sixer. it would, to me, would be a no-brainer to bring that back, even just for, even if that's the City Connect for one spot, man.
That'd
To
be
me, yeah, I think that to see this new era of Maxey and Embiid in those uniforms, whether it's a trick, right? You've already retired Allen's number. You've already retired. You're gonna idolize him with a statue. I think the only other way that you honor him is by bringing back those uniforms that were so iconic with the last time that this Sixers team made a finals run. But Mark, on the way out, to me, the struggles that we've had with this team and the way that this team is going to finish the season, probably not at the top of the East, somewhere in the middle of the pack. It seems to me like this would be the year that there would be some kind of breakthrough. It would only be done in this. The only way I can describe it is a scribble. It would only be done in this way, where you would have an iconically really historical season from Embiid up until the injury, that he gets the surgery. The team struggles mightily. He comes back. They're in the middle of the pack. They hopefully avoid the play-in tournament.
Yeah.
They're gonna, but to me, this would be the year. This would be the journey that all of everyone's expectations are like next to zero, and this would be the year that they would kind of break through.
Oh yeah, it 100% works out that way. I felt that way about the Phillies in their most recent World Series run. They kind of like go stumbling into the playoffs. I'm like, this team ain't gonna do nothing. And then like they go on this run, and you're like, and you're just like, Jesus, like the home runs and all that stuff. I mean, just ripping the cover off the ball all through that. That would be that's just how it works, right? Like we're gonna this. Your expectations get lowered because you're like, I can't invest in this anymore. And then it reminds me of Pacino and Godfather 3. Like just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in. Like
I love it.
It happens every time.
Oh, it does. Listen, stick around. We're gonna play. We'll play some commercials on the back end of this. We'll be on episode 185 of Drunk on the Ice, where we're talking all things Flyers. So stick around. We'll be right back.
Von C. Brewing Company is a 20-barrel, 16,000 square foot microbrewery with a 2,500 square foot tasting room, including a spacious outside beer garden in Norristown, PA, in the heart of Montgomery County. The Von C. family is part of the family that started C. Schmidt and Son Brewing in 1860. Stop in Wednesday through Sunday and taste a variety of draft and 16-ounce cans of originally brewed beer and tell them the Drunk on Broad crew sent you. Von C. Brewing is located at 1210 Stenbridge Street, Suite 300 in Norristown. Cheers.
Team Clicks are the only glasses for real sports fans. With interchangeable arms, you can support all of your favorite teams, or even make and create custom options as well. These die-hard sports fans have realized that sports fans needed something other than face paint to show their love and passion for their teams. Go to teamclicks.com/DOB and show your love for your hometown team.
La Torrance curated collection of men's and women's watches is a perfect investment that lasts for years to come and fits perfectly with your every outfit and style. Our range of classic watches aren't just a great perfect formal and casual accessory, but a time machine that takes you back to memories. Explore our collection of timeless watches that can reflect your taste, personality, and personal style. Our exclusive collection of carefully curated, affordable luxury watches is what you need to make a personalized style statement. You can take pride in your prized possession, handing it over to the next generations as your most loved asset that they can also own and display with the same pride. These high-quality pieces stand the test of time, giving exceptional value and return on your investment. Go to la-touraine.com and use code DOB at checkout and get 10% off.
If you're looking for unique sports apparel, check out Streaker Sports. They've dug deep into the archives and have brought back some incredible defunct team logos and have even created entire defunct league collections. They also have collections paying homage to sports culture, including the Miracle on Ice, Slap Shot, Caddyshack, the Mighty Ducks, and even have a license with Wiffle Ball and USA Hockey. Only for Drunk on Broad listeners, use code BROAD at checkout to get 10% off anything at streakersports.com. Again, that's 10% off anything at streakersports.com with discount code BROAD.
Iverson, wow, what a fake off Daniels as he broke his ankles and got all the way to the cup.
All right, well, we're back talking all things Flyers on episode 185. Mark, it's been an interesting journey. We're feel like we're navigating two different teams right now with these two winter sports that are battling off the court stuff, battling injuries, battling just to stay afloat. But I still find myself wildly intrigued by this Flyers team. When they look good, man, they look good. And, when they don't, it doesn't feel surprising because you can kind of put your finger on why they might be struggling. But, last night, I know that last night it started off okay. And then the second period came around and wildly took a turn for the worse. And I can only file it, Mark. I can only file your social media experience under tweets gone wrong.
Yeah, that was not my finest moment. I think
we've all been there.
Yeah, I really do think that Caps team's terrible. Yeah, but
I agree.
For the Flyers to get lit up, like maybe I should have waited until there was like a multiple goal lead to kind of, maybe follow that one away in the drafts or something like that. But that was, yeah, I mean, that would only, that was a rough one last night. It probably was one of the worst games of the year they've had. They get on the board first with the Bobby Brink goal,
which looks really, really good. That goal, he comes down and it looks really, really pretty.
It's an offensive. Thinking of like just kind of knowing where to go. Like he doesn't score there unless he follows up Tippett and Frost on the 2-on-1. If he's kind of just meandering back, he doesn't get back in that play. And he was able to find a loose puck. I mean, Charlie Lindgren, the Capitals goalie, made a great save on Frost on that 2-on-1. He goes sliding out of the crease, puck sitting there. Brink follows it up and scores. After that, I mean, it just really the Caps just kind of they took the game over in waves. The Flyers really didn't have any answers for them, and it was a game they needed. As far as like this divisional race, as far as playoffs are concerned, the Flyers are still in a playoff spot and they have a little bit of margin for error, but you don't want to be using it all up by mid to late March going into the final 2 months of the season. You don't want to use up that margin of error where teams that have been chasing you all that time are now legitimately in striking distance of catching you. And those you lose enough divisional games, that's going to happen, and they haven't won many lately.
Yeah, and listen, Bobby Brink, I feel like he caught both ends of the stick last night because he has that wildly impressive goal early on, and really what looks like a course correction for him to stay on the ice early on, right? Makes a good play, follows the puck, and gets a goal. And man, did he caught the business end of John Tortorella, something awful later
Man.
on in the game, because that goal that they give up to make it 3-2 in the second, with because you at that point game's tied, right? You're trying, you let up the lead.
Mhm.
You're trying to get to intermission with it tied, and they give up that goal with 2 minutes left, and it seems like it's all an effort play from Bobby Brink, and he just didn't get to that position where he was going to be able to affect the and I can't remember the Capitals guy that scored at that point, but he can't get he doesn't make as much of an effort as I'm sure Tortorella would want to see to make it a defensive play to prevent the goal, or maybe make it a little bit more difficult, because that was about as easy as goals got.
Yeah. I believe it was John Carlson came around on the
Yes.
on the wraparound attempt. And it was one of the Brink and Oli Lixell, another young player on the team that's been very good for the Phantoms, and he's had a couple call ups and little ice time, but he's had some games where he's gotten on the score sheet recently. They kind of caught the shrapnel, right, coming back to the bench, but looking at that play again, I've looked at it a couple times, and since last night, and Brink is not. He's one of the players that contributed to the lack, to the poor coverage. But I think Nick Seeler and Sean Walker were also both defensemen ended up on the same side of the ice. Ryan Paling is. It looks like I think he's covering someone in the front, but he's the closest guy to the far post. So,
right.
He does attempt to get there, and then, looking at it from the replay angle, Brink is between Carlson and Alexander Ovechkin, right? So if Carlson comes around the back post, he doesn't try to tuck it, but kicks it out to the most lethal shooter of the last decade, 20 years plus, whatever. He's the greatest goal scorer I've ever seen.
That goal by Ovechkin last night.
Yeah, right off the draw.
Oh, that was iconic Ovechkin in his prime, when he would light up people for 3 goals in a 2.5 minute stretch and change the trajectory of the game by himself. That was that was old school Ovechkin. And I'm trying to pull up the other goal right now, the one you're talking about, because to me it was I understand why Tortorella felt the way that he did.
Sure.
But for Brink to get all, I won't say all, for Brink to get a majority of the brunt of that frustration, feel like maybe was that was a little bit of misguided anger.
Sure.
But on the one sense, I also love that the accountability piece is there too. That they know that this team is growing. They know that this team is probably going to be a little bit more active at the trade deadline than maybe some people might think, in the direction that they think, right? Maybe more sellers than buyers, because of where the trajectory of this kind of rebuild is going.
Yeah.
But that accountability piece is something we've talked about before, in terms of you're going to need that accountability moving forward. So you got to learn that tough lesson now, because if that's it, you need to figure out if Bobby Brink is a guy that you want around when this rebuild turns.
Right. And, it's too, I think, that's one of those things I think with Tortorella. I don't he was benched after that, in the third period. I don't think Brink saw the ice, or Lixell saw the ice in the third period after that play. And tough divisional game. It's a double-edged sword, you know. It's a tough divisional game. You need that in order to continue to um, if the Flyers win last night, they open up a pretty significant lead on the Caps. It makes it really, really hard for them to get back into it. A win in regulation would have really put the Caps on their playoff hopes on life support this year.
Yeah.
And then, on the flip side of it, if the Capitals come up with a win, which they did, this is the play right here.
Yeah. So if you like what you're talking about, right? So if you look, right, you're seeing 3 or 4 out of the 5 guys basically look out of position, right? You got one guy that's kind of even with Harrison. You've got 4 other guys that are on the puck side of the goal. So you're leaving that entire back end open. So
Right.
I get that, right? But Brink is the guy at the top that's in between the circles.
Right.
And he's got to know that his role has to be that he's the closest guy to cover the back end of that net.
Right.
So that, I think that is where the Tortorella piece comes in.
Sure.
In terms of right there, when he starts skating towards the goal, he's got to dive right at that far post to be able to stop the wraparound from coming. But you're going to see as we kind of play it frame by frame, he starts kind of drifting towards the circle rather than the goal. So it's a bad angle from any angle, right? And here you're getting the overside, right? And you see the same kind of thing when he's at that spot right now, right? You're seeing every Flyers player that's on the ice,
right,
the wrong side of the goal. They're on the puck side, so no one's covering the back end.
Right.
He's got to be the guy that dives, right? And you see right there,
right,
that skate towards the circle
right.
doesn't necessarily give him the right angle to be able to get to and defend that wraparound. And he's got it. I mean, listen, Mark, if I know it's coming, a guy that was born with skates on also knows that it's coming too.
Yeah.
And the timing of it is terrible too.
Right. Right.
To give up that goal at that spot after you've given up the lead, right? And then you go on and you give up 4 unanswered.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just the game and the game just got away from him.
It did. It definitely did. And I like to go back to the point of benching both kids after that. I get it. I understand why he's being sat. Tough big divisional game.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're playing with 10 forwards and we're chasing the game. That's the double-edged sword part and I know that's happened before. And I'm not even saying I have a problem with in-game lessons as much as I do. Now we're kind of we're playing shorthanded. And they've done that a lot this year where Flyers have played 11 forwards and 7 and an extra defenseman quite a few times.
Mm-hmm.
It's the guys that you're leaning on every single night, it's going to wear those guys out, because they're playing. It's great to have more ice time. Everybody wants more ice time, but it's
right
every single night where, you're playing. And then I think for the defense pairs, even though you're playing together all year, we were just talking on the Sixers show about the chemistry element at the top of that show.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a defenseman, having that working with a partner that you've been playing with most of the year, you can kind of get a feel for what that guy does. And, that only helps you in games like that. But when you're playing with
about a back-to-back too, that also to me is you're gonna turn around, you're gonna play, you're gonna play the Senators tonight at home.
Mm-hmm. And that game, the Senators they've had a rotten year. But they have a lot of talent on that team, like a lot of offensive talent. Like that game,
Yeah.
if the Flyers come not ready to play, that game could get away from them too. Because like they have enough talent to, Brady Tkachuk, Tim Stützle, they have some young guys that have like some real gifts. So
Yeah.
you don't want to like let that game get away too, and have another lost weekend like they did last weekend with the Rangers and Penguins.
Yeah. It's this is the part where where I look at it and go, I'm not changing the expectations, right? I'm just watching this team and I've really enjoyed watching this team this year because I really feel like I'm by pumping the brakes a little bit and really taking a step back and really watching the player development. I'm able to appreciate more of that, but I'm looking at it going, kind of interesting to see how they approach this trade deadline. Right. Because the news comes out early or not early, but late last week about, they finally move on from Cal Peterson, which was like, you're talking about a guy who has no business being in the NHL at this point. Cause the on ice production, Mark, it reminded me of when I used to throw on the Milek pads in the cul-de-sac when I was like 12.
Yeah.
And I'm out there with my baseball glove and the waffle pad that I made from Lord knows whatever my parents had in their garage. Like it's been bad. So I wonder if do they go out and maybe grab a vet that isn't going to cost you anything, but also is a little bit more credible, that you don't feel like you need to play Sam Harrison every single night?
Yeah. I think that's going to be on the radar for them. I think long term as well. Like not even just this season, but going into the off season into next season, they're going to have to consider, bringing in another guy that can split time with Sam. Urson has been, I think, when you consider the circumstances and how he kind of got thrust in this spot this year, with the Carter Hart stuff and everything else, like all things considered, he's done an excellent job. He certainly has proven that he can play at this level. But I don't know if at this point in his career, you need to have him out there every single night, like starting 11 of 12 games or whatever it was going into that Rangers game. That's a lot of responsibility for a 24-year-old who's like, this is his first full season. So it's like, they do need someone to alleviate some of that pressure, I think. Before they consider that for the trade deadline, and I don't know if they are or they aren't, but I think Felix Sandstrom getting recalled, not that he's had a great year in Lehigh Valley either, much like Cal, but like this is another opportunity for him to try to prove that he can stick. And it'll be interesting. Like he's likely going to get this game tonight against Ottawa. So this is an opportunity for him to show that he can play at this level. I've always been a fan of Felix Sandstrom. I've seen him play at Lehigh Valley. I was actually at a game a few years ago up at Hershey. They were playing the Hershey Bears, and I went to the game, my fiance and I, and he had a really, really great game in that game. I think he stopped like 40 shots. The Phantoms lost, but they lost like 2-1 or 3-1 with an empty netter. He was excellent in that game. And I saw some other guys that are now up with the team as well in that game, Igor Samula and a couple others. But this is an opportunity to prove that he can do that kind of thing at the pro level, and at least be a serviceable backup at this point. It's been a tough journey for him. So he's had injuries and things like that. I think he's dealt with in the past, long-term injuries and stuff. So there's an opportunity for Felix before they decide to, we need another goalie in here, kind of look in-house for a couple weeks and see if they could kind of patch it for a moment.
Listen, you got a week. right? You got a week to maybe get a couple good looks at them and see if that's because I think on some level you can address it and not disrupt the rebuild at the same time. Like, and I think based on the way that this team has battled, and the way that the level of competition that they've brought each night, I think you kind of almost owe it to them to have a credible guy, going down the stretch, so that you can have the opportunity to be able to get that playoff experience, even if you know that this team is not the team that you're building around to be around when this rebuild, kind of comes to fruition. But I think you almost owe it to them. You owe it to the group to be able to have a guy with some credible playoff experience that you can kind of let Harrison kind of lean on when you get a back-to-back, or when you get, times where the team that you're going to play, because you're going to need that guy to not feel like a sieve and feel like you're playing with an empty net. Because, to have the game, the game that was wildly frustrating recently was that Penguins game. You get an opportunity. You score 6 goals against, and you score 6 goals against a Penguins team that has not had a great year. And you give up 7. It just like that shouldn't happen. Even with, if you have your average goalie in there, you win that game.
It can make or break a team, like the goaltending.
Absolutely.
Thing. You think about what it does for the group in front of you, right? Like, if you have a goalie in goal in between the pipes that's kind of standing on his head, and you're like, if you're playing in front of him, you're like, man, we won this game because of him. We owe him a dinner. What a game. And then on the flip side of it, think about how, exhausting it is to be out there. Like, as you said, you post 6 goals and the guy back there, he can't stop anything. And
I mean, it was that was really, really tough to watch, because it's like you saw the guys battling because they would go down, they would battle back, they would score, and it was like a seesaw. It kind of went back and forth, and you really just needed him to make like one stop.
And
he couldn't.
Like, we just needed him, like, even if you're not going to steal the game, right? Like, which is fine, because that's a lot. You shouldn't have to ask your goaltender to steal your game, but it's just like, making one post cross crease save would have been nice. You know what I mean? And just like one semi-difficult, difficulty save would have been nice in that game. And Cal's he had a couple good years in LA. He got the big contract, and it's never like he's never gotten back to that level. He's spent time not just here, but also in LA, up and down between the pro team and the AHL team. And he's making north of $5 million a year. It's and he's under, I believe he's under contract another year. So
you got to put him on the side of a milk carton. Like we need you to buy out, go away. Like, like whatever you got to eat in terms of his salary for to get out, just to alleviate that roster spot. And you're in a rebuild right now. So you don't want to be in a position to pay somebody who's not going to be here. But at the same time, you also can't pay a guy that's going to negatively affect the morale of the roster by leaking like a sieve. And I mean, it's just bad. So you got the trade deadline coming up on March 8th.
Yep.
So
I believe it's Friday.
Next Friday, right? So this time next week, we'll kind of know where that roster stands. Talk to me about the guys on this roster first, in terms of the trade deadline. We've kind of gone back and forth on who's at this point. What do you think the moves are that are to be made? Because there's some conversation around the NHL. I know there's been a couple moves already, and then there's conversation with Edmonton. And Edmonton being willing to move on a first round pick in 24. Talk to me about the guys on this roster.
Yeah, a lot of the rumor and innuendo here is, looking at Sean Walker, Nick Seeler. I think Scott Lawton's name's been out there a little bit, although I don't think the Flyers are in like a rush to move him.
No.
It's those are probably the two main ones, or the three main ones rather. To be honest, anybody else would kind of surprise me. Like if there were a trade that came down the pike and it involved another Flyers player other than those three, that would actually be surprising to me. But like a guy like Mark Stahl, for example, might be cheap depth veteran guy. If you were to just have an extra D on hand for a playoff run.
And he's a guy that they're not going to get anything for if he walks. So even if it's a draft pick on some level,
conditional pick or whatever, right? And it's really kind of doing him a favor. Get him on a long career, chance to win a cup, all that other stuff. So yeah, I mean, like the Walker thing's interesting because there's been both. The Flyers have been really good, and we saw this with the Cutter Gauthier and Jamie Drysdale trade. We saw this with the Flyers holding secret meetings with Metavi Michkov leading up to draft day. The Flyers have been really good at like throwing up smoke screens and redirections, and so I don't know if like some of the talk about re-signing Walker is more of a like, do the Flyers know that they have to or they should move him and that they plan to do that, but they're trying to control the messaging out there where they're kind of like, well, we'll just re-sign him. We're a playoff team, it don't matter to us. We're in a spot. You're the one coming to us, kind of thing. And kind of driving a hard bargain that wedge, which I think it's when I think about Briere and his role, and I've been really impressed with Briere has operated as a general manager much like he did as a player, where he was like quietly, like he was very stealthy, you could not realize he was there, and then he would strike, with a scoring play or something like that. And I think he's kind of operating which I love. I think is great.
Absolutely.
Is kind of he's very like he's quietly like ultra competitive. And I kind of like that about him. Always have.
It wouldn't surprise me at all.
And
I think they know what they have in terms of like these guys that they have that they're kind of shopping in terms of like Walker and Sealer. Like they know what they have. But it also seems like they're not in this tremendous urgency to get rid of them and move on, because they're if they were less competitive this year and they were not in the conversation for a playoff spot, then it makes the conversation almost an absolute. What do you think the return is for guys like that?
I think it was common knowledge to this point that the Chris Tanev trade with the Calgary Flames and the Dallas Stars, I think that trade was like common knowledge is like the trade that was going to set the defense market. I think a lot of people believe like Chris Tanev, like who's had a fantastic career. That was a really good trade for Dallas. He's going to help them in the postseason. And Tanev was like the guy that I think a lot of people felt was going to set the market. and he didn't get them a first round pick, but intriguing prospect. And then there was like a handful of other picks that were also involved in the deal.
Okay.
I do wonder if the Flyers would be also interested in, if a team doesn't want to come off, if they don't want to meet the first round asking price, would they then trade an equivalent prospect, like a former first round pick that hasn't made it yet or whatever? Kind of like similarly to what the Flyers got, in Tippett when they made the Claude Giroux trade.
Okay.
They have Florida's pick that's this year, but they also got Tippett, who was kind of like an intriguing player, but he kind of got caught behind a deep forward core and he wasn't really getting a chance to play.
Okay.
He came here, and then, we had the Flyers had the ice time to give. So it was,
and that's one that's you've really seen blossom in terms of like the blossom to the point where he's going to be around for the next, the better part of a decade.
Yeah, he parlayed it into a
going to be able to compensate him, with a salary commensurate to an emerging NHL talent, which could be unnecessarily. I'm not saying you put him front and center of your roster, but he's definitely a key piece of a guy that you're going to see around for the next 8 years, and definitely going to be around for that rebuild.
Yeah, for sure.
And I like that idea. I think you're in a good spot where you're competitive enough where you can take a chance.
You're right.
You can take a chance on a guy like that and be able to give him the roster spot. And with as competitive as they are, you're going to see and have opportunities for them to play in big games down the stretch and kind of see what you have.
Mm-hmm.
So I love the perspective of looking at like, and I think Danny Briere has operated the way that you're talking about, like with a lot of stealthy flexibility to say like, oh, okay, maybe not a number one. You're not going to give us a number one. Okay. What about this guy? What about your farm system? What about this guy that you've taken, but you can't find a spot for?
Yeah.
Is there, speaking of stealthy,
mm-hmm.
is there a guy on the roster that you're like, no way they would move him? And then they move him?
I don't know.
Is Lawton that guy?
I think Lawton might be that guy.
Because you just put the letter on the sweater for him. Like
mm-hmm.
you have, all signs point to him being around for a little bit.
Yeah.
But is that like, if I'm trying to think about like the stealthiness of Danny Briere tells me most people are on the table.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think with the Lawton thing it was that Ryan Poehling extension. I think that kind of changed. Like he's come in here, even if like the leadership aspect of it isn't as prominent with Poehling as it is with Lawton. The guys seem to love him. Scotty has always been very open about loving playing for the Flyers and being a Flyer, which it always makes it easy to root for guys like that and hate to see them go, especially if they want to be here.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there was a rumor over the summer like that. I believe it was St. Louis offered a first round pick. I have no, I don't know. There was that rumor out there,
mm-hmm.
and the Flyers turned it down. And so it makes you wonder if we were to operate under the assumption that was true, what would a team have to part with to get a guy like that?
Yeah.
So I don't know if they're getting a similar ask or, offer now. If they are, I don't know like how much longer, an offer like that's going to stand with teams for him. So it might be wise to move him now. Like I know people are always like, well, you can always revisit it in the summer, but now we're going on a year where we've kind of turned down, you know what I mean? We've turned down some of these offers, and Poehling does a lot of what Scott Lawton does, but for cheaper, and he's also younger. So I wonder if that contract was the writing on the wall for Scott, and that the Flyers are kind of maybe quietly, keeping it under wraps because they respect the player, that stuff's not out there, that, they are really willing to move him here. But I go back and forth about that with him because I could see a scenario where it makes sense. I obviously get this why it makes sense, but the Flyers are also very open about how much they love him,
Yeah.
and and how much he offers in terms of a leadership role and whatever. I don't think they're in a position where they can just turn down a first round pick for a player like that, but it's they clearly value the culture building aspect as well.
Right.
So
Yeah. Listen, before we jump out, I'm gonna give you a goalie name because while we were talking, I'm doing a little research on the
okay,
side.
yeah,
Um, you got any interest in Jake Allen from the Canadians?
yeah, I would.
Right, because his currently he's making 3.85 million.
Mhm,
He's signed through next season. Um, the Canadians are kind of operating with three goalies pretty much
mhm,
all season long, so there is some flexibility at this level. Um,
yeah,
seems like that might be. I don't know what you would have to give up to get a guy like that,
right,
and what you would give up commensurate with what you get from your farms, the guys that are in your farm system.
yeah,
And I just think it's a guy that you know could solve it could solve a problem this year, and like you were talking about,
yeah.
maybe a potential solution for next year as well.
Yeah, I would be interested in that. I think that's the kind of scenario, Don, where like they should look into a team that's kind of carrying three guys. There's only one crease, you only can have two.
Right.
So, like, I can see a scenario where like they look at something like that, or maybe even, you can throw in a pick yourself and get someone to take a Peterson contract and that has the
Yeah.
flexibility to buy more flexibility to buy him out if the Flyers didn't want to, hemorrhage the cap space or whatever the case may be. Which I think they do have some space, I think, to kind of like absorb that for a couple years,
Yeah.
a buyout. So it's not as like it's not as financially like straining on them if they were to buy him out. But Jake Allen would be somebody like I could see that. I could see them trying to grab a guy like that and give you a little bit of production and a backup role. I could definitely see that.
Nice. Well, listen, Mark, before we jump out, give the people a little preview of the next what you got planned on the water cooler talk.
Yeah, Water Cooler Talk is going to be back on Thursday night of this week. We're going to do a little pre trade deadline special. A longtime friend of mine's going to jump on, and a big hockey fan. He's gonna join me, and we're going to chop it up about trade deadline. I'm assuming that there's going to be some things that are going to happen this week, whether the Flyers are around the league that will have things to talk about.
Gotcha.
So, we'll be back, and that'll be available for everybody Friday morning as the deadline's going on. So you can hear us kind of chop up about what's happened and what may happen. So it might be a fun listen.
Nice. Well, listen, have a good weekend,
You too,
everybody.
man.
Thanks for tuning in and checking us out. We'll see you in a couple weeks
A couple weeks.
for trade deadline recap and talking all things Flyers.
Yeah.
Have a good
Peace.
weekend, everybody. Go Flyers.